One day, as Jesus and his disciples journeyed through the hills of Galilee, they reached a small village by a serene lake. The air was warm and a gentle breeze rippled across the water's surface. They decided to rest by the lakeside, where the sounds of birds and rustling leaves created a peaceful atmosphere. As they sat, Jesus noticed a young boy sitting by the shore, struggling with a broken fishing net. His face was downcast and he muttered softly, "I am not good at anything. Why do I even try?" The disciples observed the boy as well, noticing his frustration and self-doubt. Jesus, ever compassionate, turned to his disciples with a gentle smile and said, "Watch carefully." He stood and approached the boy, kneeling beside him. "What troubles you, my son?" Jesus asked kindly. The boy looked up, surprised to see a man speaking to him. He hesitated for a moment before responding, "My father is a fisherman, but I cannot even mend a simple net. No matter how hard I try, I always fail. I am worthless." Jesus looked at the boy with deep understanding. "Come, sit with us," he said, guiding the boy over to where the disciples sat. The boy, though unsure, followed. Once they were all seated, Jesus turned to his disciples and began to speak. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "There was once a shepherd named Elijah who lived in a small village much like this one. Elijah was kind, hardworking, and deeply devoted to his flock. Every day he led his sheep to green pastures and safe waters. But despite all the good he did, Elijah often spoke poorly of himself. 'I am only a shepherd,' he would say. 'What am I compared to the wise men or the wealthy merchants of the town? I have no special skills or riches.'" Jesus paused for a moment, letting his words sink in before continuing. One evening, a fierce storm rolled in from the mountains, darker and stronger than any the villagers had ever seen. The wind howled and the rain fell in torrents. Everyone rushed to secure their homes, fearing the worst. But Elijah did not think of himself. His thoughts were only for his sheep, scattered in the hills. Without hesitation, he grabbed his staff and set out into the storm, determined to save his flock. The rain battered his face and the wind nearly knocked him off his feet, but Elijah pressed on. He called out to his sheep, guiding them back to safety one by one, using only his voice and the light of his heart. Hours passed, and when the storm finally subsided, Elijah stood in the middle of the village square, drenched and exhausted but surrounded by his entire flock, every sheep accounted for. Jesus' disciples listened intently, drawn into the story, while the boy stared wide-eyed, hanging on to every word. As Elijah rested, an elder of the village approached him. Jesus continued, "You have done a great thing," the elder said. "While the storm raged and others sought shelter, you risked your life for your sheep. Yet you always speak as though you are of little worth. Do you not see that your courage and devotion make you more valuable than gold or silver? You are a shepherd, but it is not your title that defines you. It is your heart, your actions, and the love with which you care for others." Elijah was silent for a long time, reflecting on the elder's words. For the first time he began to see himself differently. He realized that his worth was not in his wealth or status, but in the kindness he showed, in the love he gave, and in the responsibility he took for those in his care. From that day on, Elijah walked with his head high, knowing that his life, though simple, was full of purpose and meaning. Jesus paused, allowing the story to settle in the minds of his disciples and the boy. The gentle sound of the lake's waves filled the silence. Then Jesus turned to the young boy and said, "Do you see now, my child? Your worth is not determined by how perfectly you can mend a net or whether you are the best fisherman. Your value lies in the love you have, the effort you give, and the good you bring into the world. You are a child of God, created with purpose. Just like the shepherd, you have something precious to offer, even if you do not yet see it. Your worth is far greater than you think." The boy's eyes filled with tears as he listened to Jesus' words. "But, what if I fail again?" he asked quietly. Jesus smiled warmly and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Failure does not lessen your worth. Each time you try, you grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. Remember, even the greatest trees start as small seeds, growing slowly but surely. Have faith in yourself and trust that God has given you all you need." The disciples, moved by the story, looked at one another with newfound understanding. They had often wondered about their own worth, especially when they compared themselves to others. Jesus, seeing this, added, "The world will often tell you that your value comes from what you achieve, from how much you have, or from the praise of others. But I tell you this, your true worth comes from within. It comes from knowing that you are loved by God, that you are here to serve others, and that your life has meaning far beyond what the world measures." The boy, his heart lifted, smiled for the first time. "Thank you, Master," he whispered. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the lake, Jesus and his disciples rose to continue their journey. The boy, holding his broken net, watched them go, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. He would mend the net in time, but more importantly, he now understood that his true worth was not in the net, but in himself. And so, Jesus left the village, having sown the seeds of wisdom and self-esteem in the hearts of his disciples and a young boy by the lake. This extended version adds more depth to the scenes and characters while maintaining the key message about self-esteem, emphasizing inner worth over external achievements. You said, "Make it more big story, add prayer according to this story and place it in the last." ChatGPT said. ChatGPT. Here is the expanded version of the story with more scenes and a concluding prayer based on the message of self-esteem. One peaceful afternoon, Jesus and his disciples were traveling through the hills of Galilee. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden hue over the landscape. They decided to rest in a small village by the lakeside, where the clear waters reflected the sky like a mirror. As they settled down, they noticed a young boy nearby, struggling with a fishing net. His face was twisted in frustration, his fingers fumbling with the broken strands. "I am useless," the boy muttered to himself. "No matter how hard I try, I always fail. I'll never be as good as my father." Jesus observed the boy for a moment, then gestured to his disciples to watch closely. He walked over to the boy, kneeling beside him. "What troubles you, my child?" Jesus asked gently. Startled, the boy looked up, his eyes meeting Jesus. "I can't even fix this net," he said with a sigh. "My father is a great fisherman, but I'm not. I'm no good at anything." Jesus smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "Come sit with us," he invited the boy. The disciples gathered around as Jesus began to speak. "Let me tell you a story," he said, his voice calm and filled with wisdom. "There was once a shepherd named Elijah," Jesus began, "who lived in a small village much like this one. Elijah was devoted to his flock. Each day he led his sheep to the best pastures and protected them from wolves and danger. Yet, despite his dedication, Elijah often doubted his own worth. He would look at the wealthy traders and the powerful rulers of his town and think to himself, 'I am only a shepherd. I am nothing compared to them. What value do I have?' Jesus' disciples and the boy listened intently, captured by the story. One evening, Jesus continued, a terrible storm rolled across the land. The winds howled and the rain poured down like a flood from the heavens. The villagers hurried to their homes, seeking shelter. But Elijah, even in the face of danger, could not rest. His sheep were scattered in the hills, unprotected. Without hesitation, he grabbed his staff and set out into the storm. The rain lashed against his face and the wind nearly knocked him off his feet, but Elijah pressed on. He called out to his sheep, searching for them one by one. Despite the fierce storm, he would not give up. Hours passed, and when the storm finally subsided, Elijah stood in the village square, drenched and exhausted but surrounded by his entire flock. Not a single sheep was lost. Jesus paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. The next morning, the village elder came to Elijah and said, "You have done a great thing, Elijah. While others were safe in their homes, you braved the storm to save your flock. Yet, I hear you speak as though you are of little worth. Do you not see that your courage and love for your sheep are more valuable than any riches? It is not the title you bear, but the heart with which you serve, that gives you your true worth." Elijah thought about the elder's words. For the first time, he began to see himself differently. He realized that his value was not in the wealth he lacked or the titles he did not possess, but in the love and dedication he showed to his sheep. From that day on, Elijah walked with his head held high, no longer doubting his worth. The boy, who had been listening closely, stared at Jesus with wide eyes. "But what if I never become as great as my father?" he asked, his voice small and unsure. Jesus gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your worth does not depend on being like anyone else," he said. Just as Elijah was not a wealthy man or a king, yet he was precious in the eyes of God, so are you. Your value comes not from what you can or cannot do, but from the love within your heart. You are a child of God, created in His image. You have worth beyond measure, simply because you are loved by Him. The disciples nodded, reflecting on their own struggles with self-doubt. They too had often compared themselves to others, wondering if they were truly worthy of the tasks they had been given. Jesus, seeing this, continued, "The world will often tell you that your worth is found in riches, power, or achievements. But I tell you, your worth is found in your heart. It is found in your love for God, in the kindness you show to others, and in the faith you carry. Do not let the world's standards define you, for in the eyes of the Father, you are already precious." The boy's eyes filled with tears as he listened. For the first time he felt a weight lift from his heart. "Thank you, Master," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Jesus smiled warmly. "Do not fear, my child. You are enough just as you are." As the sun began to set over the lake, casting a soft golden light across the water, Jesus and his disciples rose to continue their journey. The boy, holding his broken net, watched them go, feeling a peace he had never known before. He would mend the net in time, but now he understood that his true worth was not in the net or in fishing, but in the love and courage within his heart. Prayer. As the group began to depart, Jesus stopped and bowed his head in prayer, inviting his disciples and the boy to join him. "Father in heaven, we come before you with humble hearts, knowing that our worth does not come from the world but from your love. Help us to see ourselves through your eyes, to understand that we are precious, not because of what we do but because of who we are in you. Teach us to let go of our doubts, to embrace the love you have placed within us, and to walk with confidence, knowing that we are never alone. Guide us to remember that our value lies not in the riches we possess, the titles we hold, or the opinions of others, but in the love we share, the kindness we show, and the faith we carry. Just as the shepherd cared for his flock with devotion, let us care for those around us, trusting that in serving others we fulfill your will. Grant us the wisdom to see that failure does not diminish our worth, and that every step we take, even in uncertainty, brings us closer to the purpose you have set for us. Strengthen our hearts, Father, so that we may walk in your truth, with heads held high, knowing that we are beloved children of the Almighty. Amen. With the prayer, the disciples felt a deep sense of reassurance. The boy too felt his heart swell with hope. As Jesus and his disciples moved onward, they left behind not just a lesson but a seed of wisdom that would grow in the hearts of all who had heard. This is end of the story. Please like this video and subscribe my channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.